Good morning, you guys. It's your boy Ben Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LVBC and the entire basketball community. If you want more basketball content, tune into Basketball Conversations every Friday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. This is where we discuss basketball related topics, news, debates, and everything else in the world of basketball. The playoffs are underway, guys, and so be prepared for all the latest news, updates, and all the analysis that's going on in the NBA playoffs as we determine a new NBA champion. All right. So this is another episode of the Morning Historical Perspective, and this is a subscriber request, and we're going to be talking about one of my favorite games of the Bulls dynasty, and that is the famous Blue Game, which is the Game Five of the 1997 NBA Finals. Okay. Now, before we talk about the game, let's talk about the circumstances around the game. All right. Obviously, this was one of the greatest games of Jordan's career. Playing through a serious illness. Okay, um, this was between the Jazz and the Bulls. The series was decided 2 games apiece. After the Bulls, took the first two in Chicago, Utah came back and won two dramatic games in the Delta Center to tie the series up at 2 games apiece. The morning of the game, right? So this was basically during the early morning hours. Okay, Michael Jordan was in his hotel, and he was basically hungry. Food service at the hotel was closed that night, and so Tim Grover, which was his trainer, and another friend of his was basically ordered out some pizza from a random pizza place. And if you reflect back from the Jordan documentary, there were at least about 5 people who came in to bring out the pizza. And if when you hear that story, you tend to think something was up about that, because why would it take 5 people to send out one pizza? And when they found out, I think they found out that it was probably Jordan's pizza. So, and most likely it probably was Jazz fans. So they were thinking, well, what if we put some other stuff into that pizza to try to, get him sick or something like that? You know what I'm saying? So, but they ordered out the pizza, and they gave it to Michael, and Michael basically ate out the entire pizza. Around 2 a.m. that Tuesday morning, his Jordan basically was thrown up all over the place. He was lying in his fetal position, and he was sweating hard, and he couldn't drink anything. He couldn't put any food down, and it was pretty much determined that he basically had food poisoning, likely from basically the pizza that he pretty much ate, earlier on in the evening. And so this was a very very significant thing, because the series was tied at 2 games apiece, and the Utah Jazz had not lost at home since February. And so they were pretty much riding on an emotional wave, and they knew that a victory away puts them at a 3-2 lead and puts them at a victory away from their first ever NBA championship. So the Bulls athletic trainers pretty much told Jordan that there was no way physically that he was going to be able to play, but was determined to get out there and play. And right before the game, Jordan got out of bed at 5:50 p.m. On the West Coast time on that Wednesday, and he got to the Delta Center just in time before the 7 o'clock tip off of the game. And when he stepped onto the court, you could visibly tell that Michael was just generally weak. He had literally no energy whatsoever. And when the game kind of got started, the Jazz got off to a very quick start. They showed their energy, they showed their fast break, and they were pretty much a step ahead of the Chicago Bulls. And they built up a 16-point lead, into the second quarter. And you could see how Michael was visibly tired. I mean, I remember watching the game as a kid. I was thinking, man, how's he going to survive through this game? Because he was looked like he was spent. He had literally no energy on him, and through sheer determination and through sheer willpower, Michael Jordan slowly made shots despite showing his lack of speed and his explosiveness. And as the game progressed, he started, making shots. He became much more confident within himself as he scored 17 points in that second quarter of play to cut the 16-point lead down to 4. And when they pretty much came out for the second half, and the Bulls were still riding on that high. The 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 Bulls turned up the defense on another level, and the thing that I remember from that flu game was on the Jazz side of things was that Karl Malone to me did not play his best game of the series when his team needed it the most. He was taking very bad shots. He was taking unnecessary fadeaway jumpers. He was taking you know shots, and he was basically putting himself in foul trouble. He was pretty much in foul trouble the whole night. And at a time when the MVP needed to put his best game out there in the open to put his team in the position to win a championship, Malone failed significantly. And pretty much as the game progressed on, Jordan, while he was still showing signs of fatigue and pretty much showing the lack of energy, he still remained in the fight. And the Jazz was able to cut the stretch lead to 8. But when Jordan regained his energy for the fourth quarter, he scored at least 15 points in that quarter to keep the Bulls into the game. And with 46.4 seconds to go, and with Chicago down by 1, Jordan was at the free throw line. He made the first one to tie the game, but ended up missing the second. But because they did not box out Jordan or box out Tony Kukoc, Tony Kukoc was able to get the back tap to allow Jordan to gather up the loose ball, who dribbled it back to pretty much set up once again to score for the game-winning shot. So you rewind to that last play, right? So here's what happened: Jordan had the ball, right, and basically dished it out to Pippen on the left side of the block. So Byron Russell, who was assigned to Jordan to defend him, right, had pretty much two decisions. Do I double team on Pippen against a smaller Jeff Hornacek, or do I stay home on Michael Jordan and allow Pippen to basically post up against a smaller Jeff Hornacek? But uh, whatever decision he made, Ron Russell made the wrong decision and decided to double team Scottie Pippen and leaving John Stockton to defend two people, either Steve Kerr, who was in the game for his 3-point shooting, or wide open Michael Jordan. Unfortunately, Ron Russell made the decision um, to double team Scottie Pippen and left Michael Jordan wide open for a three that pretty much gave them, an 88-85 lead. And then after, training dunks left and right, the Bulls were able to hang on to win 90-88 and perhaps one of the greatest games ever played in NBA history. People didn't understand at the time how significant this was. Michael Jordan pretty much dug in deep to another level that rarely any other players, are able to do. I don't know how. I don't know how Michael was able to survive and play effectively through that illness. Not many players in the NBA would have played through under those circumstances. But that's what makes Michael Jordan so great: the ability to overcome adversity and pretty much sunk deep into his reservoir of energy and play every game like it's his last. And so at the end of the game, Michael Jordan's stat line from that game, he finished up the game with scoring 38 points, right? He scored 38 points as I pull up the stats up real quick. So he scored at least 38 points. I know he also had at least 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals, right? So he was pretty much the offense the whole night. As for the Jazz, Karl Malone played terrible. He shot 7 to 17. He only scored 19 points, and really didn't show the aggressiveness that the Jazz needed from their top player to take control of the series. And it showed on the biggest stage. He didn't play bad, but he wasn't assertive enough in the biggest game of the series. And Michael answered the challenge through sickness and in health. He answered the challenge and led the Bulls to a big victory in that series. And perhaps one of the most iconic moments of that series is when he was walking to the bench and nearly fainted, and basically Scottie Pippen held on to him as he was pretty much going to sit back down on the bench. I mean, Michael was just pretty much exhausted. I mean, from the beginning of the game, he was playing on nothing but pure will and just, playing on the last bit of energy he had left in the tank. But that's what made Michael, the greatest player of all time, and had more of those kind of games like that through various circumstances. And so The Bulls came back to Chicago and ended up closing out the series in 6 games after Steve Kerr hit the game-winning jump shot to give the Bulls their fifth championship in the last 7 years. Looking back on that game, it was a game that pretty much demonstrated the heart, the determination, and the resolve Michael Jordan has always had throughout his entire basketball career. But when you look back at that Last Dance documentary, it was pretty much a representation to what he was able to do on the basketball court, but more importantly, how he was able to play and overcome through various circumstances to be the best at his position. And so, remembering that game, you could vividly see how weak and vividly exhausted he was, but just relieved. And when the Bulls won the game, you know what I'm saying. And so, at the end of the day, he played like champions always do, but he had to sink in deep to another level to get the job done. And, to credit it to him because not many players would have done what he did during those circumstances. But that's just my 2 cents on the whole game. It was just a great game from start to finish, and the game's basically accessible on YouTube. All you got to do is just research and find it. But tell me what you guys think in the comment section.